Good afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Thursday, April 9th, 2015, around 3:47 p.m. in Belleville, Massachusetts. Still a damp day out. Highs about 40. We got some rain and snow showers this morning, but nothing significant. Some news to report. It's Happy National Name Yourself Day. You can name yourself anything today. And it's also Walgreens Pharmacies is going to be closing 200 stores. And the NCAA Men's Frozen Four happens tonight at 5 p.m. on ESPN2 at the TD Garden. It's going to be Providence against the University of Omaha, Nebraska in one game. And the second game will be BU against North Dakota. And that's about it on the news. My next subject is the continuation of my subject of professional wrestling regional territories back in the day. I'm now on to the CWA/USWA out of Memphis. This was one of the last professional regional territories to survive the onslaught of WWE and WCW's growth throughout the 80s and the 90s. It was run by Jerry Jarrett and Jerry the King Lawler, and Lawler was its top star for many, many years. And he was a fan favorite in Memphis, Tennessee, and the territory, but when he went to other territories, he was a heel. The beginnings of the CWA and USWA actually was promoted as NWA Mid-American Territory, based out of Memphis in the late 40s, run by Nick Gulish, and it was an NWA territory. It was basically a tag team territory for many, many years. Such teams as the Infernos, the Interns, the Bounty Hunters, Jerry Jarrett and Tojo Yamamoto, the Fabulous Kangaroos, Jerry the King Lawler and Jim West, and the Fargo brothers, Jackie Fargo and Don Fargo. The Fargos were like Jerry the King Lawler's role models for wrestling, and for years it was a tag team territory. But in the 70s, the mid-70s, it became Jerry the King Lawler was the focus of the territory as a heel and stuff, because he was aligned with Jimmy Hart. Around 1977, the NWA Mid-American Territory was bought out by Jerry Jarrett, who dumped Nick Gulish because Nick Gulish wanted to push his son George to the moon, and George had a good body, but he had no wrestling talent, and Jerry Jarrett bought him out for $50,000 to stop running the territory. And then the territory was renamed the Continental Wrestling Association, and the Continental Wrestling Association still had its focus with Jerry the King Lawler as a heel and Jimmy Hart as his manager. And also the NWA they had NWA membership for a few years, as a traveling NWA champion would come in. Usually Harley Race would defend against some of the top stars in CWA, which was Bill Dundee and Don Bass and Dutch Mantell and others. And Jerry the King Lawler was a heel into 1980 when he got injured, and Jimmy Hart dumped him, and he went for new wrestlers to manage. The first family, like Paul Ellering, he was the new king of Memphis, and Jimmy Valiant, and Kevin Sullivan, and the Honky Tonk Man, which was Wayne Ferris, and so many others. When Jerry the King Lawler became healed up, he became face and feuded with Jimmy Hart's Army. The First Family for many, many years was one of the longest running feuds of all time. Some young talent developed in Memphis, including Tommy Wildfire Rich, Austin Idol, the Fabulous Ones, Steve Kern, and Stan Lane, the Rock and Roll Express, and a few others. The CWA had one of the most famous feuds in professional wrestling history around 1982. That's when Jerry the King Lawler feuded with actor, comedian Andy Kaufman. Andy Kaufman came into the territory as the intergender champion. He used to wrestle women, and then Jerry the King Lawler would interfered in one of the matches, and then they started maybe a year-long feud between the King Jerry Lawler and Andy Kaufman. I'll cover that in a future video blog. And the CWA territory would go from usually Memphis, Nashville, Evansville, Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, Tupelo, Mississippi. It was a big region. Also, they filmed studio wrestling on WMC Channel 5 in Memphis, Tennessee, which was the NBC affiliate. For many years, calling the action on their programs was Lance Russell and Dave Brown, who was actually the weatherman for WMC Channel 5. When Lance Russell went to WCW in 1989, Dave Brown became the head announcer, and then they had a few of them. Michael St. John, who bore a resemblance to a kind of an older Michael Cole, and then Corey Macklin, and then Lance Russell came back in 1994 out of semi-retirement. And the CWA stopped being affiliated with the NWA, and then they had a kind of a loose association with the AWA on and off through the mid to late 80s. Also, the CWA had superstars in the making, like Eddie Gilbert and King Kong Bundy and stuff, and also Randy Macho Man Savage and Lanny Poffo came into the CWA for about a year after they had an outlaw promotion in Eastern Tennessee called the ICW, which was run by their father, Angelo Poffo. Jerry the King Lawler feud with Leaping Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage and others. And towards like the mid 80s, they got more talent and stuff. They developed more young talent, like Lord Humongous, who became Psycho Sid Vicious, and then the Masters of Pain, who was the Undertaker, and the Nasty Boys and the Midnight Rockers had their trade in the CWA to start off with. Around they would always have weekly Monday night cards at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis, Tennessee, which, they sold out pretty good for that. Many of the times they would draw capacity. Around 1987, the CWA had made probably the biggest feud since the Andy Kaufman, Jerry the King Lawler feud, which was Jerry the King Lawler facing off against Austin Idol and a heel, Tommy Wildfire Rich, and their manager was Paulie Dangerously, who is Paul Heyman. Like, I'm a Paul Heyman guy, or I'm a Julie Bratton guy. Anyway, this like feud with Jerry the King Lawler and Austin Idol and Tommy Wildfire Rich was awesome, and they had a steel cage match where the loser would get their hair shaved. It was Austin Idol against Jerry the King Lawler, and the ending had Tommy Wildfire Rich, who hid under the ring the entire day. Nobody knew he was under the ring. Came in, interfered, attacked Jerry Lawler. Austin Idol pinned 1, 2, 3. Austin Idol and Paul Dangerously and Tommy Wildfire Rich cut the King's hair, and the fans were going crazy. They were about to riot like crazy. It was unbelievable. And also around this, and it was probably the greatest feud in Memphis wrestling history, next to the Kaufman Lawler feud, but it ended quickly because Austin Idol, Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerously, and Tommy Wildfire Rich was fired soon afterwards for missing some dates. Also later on in the late 80s, Jeff Jarrett made his debut, and JC Ice from PG-13 and Wolfie D. And around 1988, the CWA went into some talent working arrangements with World Class Championship Wrestling and the AWA. Jerry the King Lawler beat Kurt Hennig to win the AWA World title at Mid-South Coliseum in May of 1988. If Jerry the King Lawler lost that match, he would retire from professional wrestling for good. But Kurt Hennig actually signed a deal with the WWE beforehand, so the King was going to win the match. And then the King defended the AWA title, and he was also the CWA champion and stuff. And then he was a face in Memphis, but he was a heel in the AWA territory. And then the AWA, CWA, and USWA had like a super they were promoting a pay-per-view called Super Clash 3, which happened on December 13th, 1988. It was a unification match between Jerry the King Lawler, who was the AWA and CWA champion, against Kerry Von Erich. But the match was so bloody, Kerry Von Erich had the claw on Jerry the King Lawler, and then the referee stopped it, and the King won the match and unified the WCCW, the CWA, and AWA World title. It became the unified title, but Jerry the King Lawler did not get paid for that pay-per-view. Nobody did. So he refused to go back to the AWA. That belt got converted to to the Unified Championship. They also had the Southern Heavyweight Championship, or they called the USWA CWA Championship, and then CWA Tag Team titles. Around 1990, the CWA got rebranded as USWA because they used it as the Memphis promotion, the Dallas promotion, so they used the USWA. And they had more talent come in, like Rob Van Dam, Sabu, and stuff. Eric Embry became a heel there. They had a classic feud in 1992, which was voted PWI Feud of the Year. It was Jerry the King Lawler and Jeff Jarrett against the Moondogs. They back and forth over the USWA tag team titles. Around late 1992, the USWA got a talent exchange agreement with the WWE, and there was a lot of wrestlers who were sent down from the WWE to appear on weekly Mid-South Coliseum cards, and they were treated like heels, and Jerry the King Lawler and Jeff Jarrett went to the the WWE, and they were heels. And also around the early 90s, Brian Christopher, who was the son of Jerry the King Lawler, made his wrestling debut and became one of the top heels in USWA, but they did not acknowledge that. Some of the wrestlers who came down from Memphis from the WWE were Johnny Polo, Lex Luger, Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, Shawn Michaels, Tatanka, Randy Macho Man Savage, and the few appearances as Vince McMahon as Mr. McMahon, his early character. I think there was a plan in late '93 for have Vince McMahon wrestle Jerry the King Lawler at the Mid-South Coliseum, but that match was scrapped because Vince McMahon got indicted for the steroids trial, and Jerry the King Lawler had trouble with charges was filed for him against him by a 13-year-old coach, saying he was raping her, or Salome raping her, but those charges were dropped because the girl made up the story. And I think that would have been a big opportunity for Jerry the King Lawler wrestling Vince McMahon at the Mid-South Coliseum. Probably would have sold out the Mid-South Coliseum, but the feud was not good. The feud would have been perfect if Lance Russell was calling it, and somehow Jimmy Hart was in Vince McMahon's corner. But Jimmy Hart went to WCW around that time with Hulk Hogan, and USWA and WWE continued to have the work agreement up to 1996, 1997. Around that time, the Mid-South Coliseum stopped running weekly shows because of they had trouble with the USWA, Jerry Jarrett and Jerry the King Lawler. Then they wrestled at a flea market called the Big One, and they lasted until the company folded. Around 1997, they had an angle with ECW, some ECW superstars like Tommy Dreamer and Justin Credible, and a few others came down and feuded with Lawler and what was left of the USWA. In the fall of 1997, the USWA closed its doors for good because new ownership bankrupt the company, and it was sad to see Memphis wrestling gone because it was such an institution. It survived WCW and WWE's onslaught of the wrestling world, and it became very good because Jerry the King Lawler owned the territory and he was not going to leave it permanently. And also it developed some great stars like Jeff Jarrett and Brian Christopher. The Rock started there. The Rockers, the Nasty Boys, Psycho Sid Vicious, The Undertaker, The Godfather, and so many other wrestlers started their career in Memphis and stuff like that. And in the Mid-South Coliseum, very famous, probably the Madison Square Garden of Tennessee. And the USWA, CWA's tape library, the whereabouts is unknown. Some of it, I've heard some rumors it's been destroyed. Others it's held up in like bankruptcy court because one of the owners just don't want it to be released and stuff like that. And when Jerry the King Lawler's DVD comes out for WWE in May, it's tapes. Some of the matches will be tapes of him in CWA, USWA. It's from his own tape library, which could be, not perfect, but at least that's something. And that's about it on the CWA, USWA regional territory. Tomorrow, I am going to be talking about another regional wrestling territory in the southern United States, Smoky Mountain Wrestling, which lasted from 1991 through 1995 as probably one of the last regional territories to start up. It was owned by professional wrestling manager James E. Cornette. And that's about it on that. Be back for the third and final video blog of the night, which will be about Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterback Fran Tarkenton. Okay, have a good day, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Bye.